Thank you. Mr. Banks is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I had to step out to go cast a procedural vote, so I missed a little bit of the testimony so far today. But I did want to ask immediately, Dr. Ratner, it seems that we've established today that the threat of a Chinese invasion into Taiwan is more than ever before. I mean, is that fair to say?
I think there is a mounting threat of aggression from the PRC.
More than before, more than ever before.
With the capability that they have today, yes.
That's the message today.
They
more
have
than ever,
conducted
more than
acts
ever
of aggression in the past, so I wouldn't say more than ever before.
More than in recent years.
Yes, the threat is
fair enough. Admiral, would you say that Taiwan is safer in 2022 than, say, just pulling something out of the hat, summer of 2019?
Congressman, thanks. I think they are seeing exactly what we're seeing, which is this increased aggression. I don't know how to measure whether they're safer or not. I think there's a growing concern based on what they've watched the PRC execute over the last number of years.
But we're here today because this increased aggression it's increasing, it's growing, it's more of a threat than it was before. In August 2019, Jake Sullivan debated Michael Pillsbury from the Hudson Institute, and he said, quote, "When it comes to the issue of Taiwan, 30 months into the Trump administration, it is more likely for the U.S. to be dragged into a war with China than 30 months ago. The Trump policy toward China is fundamentally not productive," end quote. Today, coincidentally, we are 14 months into the Biden administration, of which Mr. Sullivan is acting as President Biden's national security advisor. Admiral, are we less likely today to be dragged into a war with China over Taiwan as compared to 2019?
Sir, once again, I see increasing desire to build up and continue to grow their military capabilities. President Xi Jinping, in a public statement, said he wanted his forces modernized by 2027. He didn't articulate what he would do with them or when he would do it. But from where I sit, my responsibility is to ensure we're ready should that occur.
So, Dr. Ratner, what's changed? What's changed between the summer of 2019 and where we sit today? What is the fundamental difference in our foreign policy today that has led to an increased aggression, as the Admiral defined it, in China's posture toward Taiwan? What's different? Why now?
Congressman, I don't attribute Xi Jinping's growing aggression and assertiveness to the United States.
You don't? Okay. Well, what's changed? What's changed? Why now? Why not then? If it doesn't have anything to do with the United States.
I'd be happy to share that assessment in a classified setting. His capabilities are growing, and his patience seems to be decreasing.
But you don't have an explanation for the American people about why.
Well, if I could jump in, Congressman. So again, this is about what the PRC has done, not what anyone else has done, right? They've taken lives on the Indian line of actual control. They have discounted their agreement as it applied to Hong Kong. They have locked up 1 million Muslims in Xinjiang. So their actions, the PRC actions, not U.S. actions, not any other nation's actions, are the things that give us concern. I think that's what you were getting to.
What I'm getting at is that Jake Sullivan said that this was more likely to happen on Donald Trump's watch because of Donald Trump's foreign policy. But instead, Dr. Ratner, you conceded that the threat is more real today than it has been at any point in recent years. Let me move on. North Korea restarted missile tests. North Korea restarted missile tests in 2021 after a 4-year pause in testing. In 2022, North Korea conducted a record number of missile tests. Last Saturday, it conducted the 9th missile test this year. In addition, recent satellite images have shown North Korea seems to be building up nuclear testing. General, what factors do you think led North Korea to resume these provocative behaviors since 2021 after a rather long hiatus?
KJU claims it's because of sanctions and that we haven't come to the table. I think it's more internal for him. I think it's fairly complicated when you think of the Moon administration's on a transition. And I think, as we just talked about with China, I think he defers to China, but he's also looking to be autonomous. So while this threat is to the south and to the U.S.,
I'm sorry, but the gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Panetta is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Let me just get my questions. In regards to the other night, gentlemen, obviously, thanks to all three of you for being here and appreciate your patience as well as your testimony and information you're providing us. The other night, I had a good conversation with a representative of Taiwan. And obviously, we were talking about Ukraine, and we were talking about how inspired we are by the Ukrainian people and how their population is all in on this, obviously. Obviously, then that pivoted to the people of Taiwan and talking about the National Guard and the conscription services that they have there. Obviously, that's something that I think was going to play an important part if there is any sort of invasion by the PRC. That being said, is there anything that we can do? Is there anything that the Taiwanese should do in order to increase the capacity, increase the will of the National Guard or those who are under conscription service in regards to what they can do to be more involved in their service or in their will to respond to a PRC attack?
Thanks, Congressman. I believe, well, I know for a fact that this is an initiative that's being developed and implemented to ensure that there's a robust, whether you want to call it National Guard, Reserve Force, or capability outside of the uniformed service to be able to defend their nation. So it's very important, and they are working diligently to develop that system.
Are we involved in any way of helping them in that?
As a part of the Taiwan Relations Act, we contribute to the support of their defense, and that includes both weapons via FMS capabilities that we've talked about, but also through services and training. Yes.
Right. Thank you. And Admiral, you talked about, I think it was in your questioning, in the question and answers to the chairman, you said, number one, we need a more integrated and sustainable ISR. Go into that a little bit, please. And how can we create a more robust exchange of our ISR with our allies?
Yeah, thanks, Congressman. Again, this persistent understanding in real time of the battle space is critical, and via contributions from all domains, with the ability to share it with our allies and partners through what I articulated through this mission partner environment. My number two funding priority, as you should have seen in my unfunded list, when you combine those together, those deliver a very strong capability as it applies to both deterrence and then, should deterrence fail, to be able to fight and win.
Dr. Ratner, anything to say on that?
Nothing to add. I support exactly what Admiral Aquilino articulated.
Gentlemen, after moving on to the violent extremist threat in the Philippines and in Indonesia, after our withdrawal from Afghanistan, did we see any uptick in either rhetoric or in capabilities by any VE groups in that area? And then subsequent to that, can you give an assessment of the VE groups at this point?
Thanks, Congressman. As you articulated, specifically in the southern Philippines, where we have helped our partner nation there to ensure they don't have a terrorist problem. Those efforts continue, but I have not seen an uptick since the recent decision to depart Afghanistan. That said, we are concerned about foreign fighter flow. The SOCPAC commander has been tasked to ensure that we maintain vigilant, but I haven't seen a change as of now.
Thank you. And in Indonesia, anything, Admiral?
Again, it's the area, we are always concerned about any increase in violent extremist organizations, and we continue to work with the Indonesians and support them as they also watch this issue.
Great. Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The chair now recognizes Mr. Johnson for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for being here. In 2019, the U.S. Transportation Command conducted a no-notice readiness exercise to test the organic surge fleet capacity to quickly mobilize for war. Out of 61 ships, just 27 were ready for sea after 120 hours. These vessels are over 40 years old, and readiness rates are likely declining further as they age, obviously. Previously, the department has indicated that it plans to rely on contract shipping to supplement logistics needs. So the question is, do you think that international shipping companies now will risk access to the Chinese market to support the U.S. in a conflict? I suppose that's for Dr. Ratner.
Congressman, this is Admiral Aquilino. If I could throw in here first. First of all, I thanked Congressman Courtney and the committee for the support to the TSP program. Completely effective. I also endorse General Van Oost's and Admiral Mewbourne's ability to go ahead and prove to us whether or not the system can respond. I think we highlighted some challenges that we have to fix. In my conversations with the CNO, he's working towards increased sea lift, the sustainability, the readiness, but all of those that come together help us to realize the distributed nature and the agile logistics that we need. So I don't know if I want to go hypothetically at your question. What I would say is we're doing the right things to ensure that those capabilities are ready, available when we need them.
That's good. Dr. Ratner, would you add anything to that?
I would just say, Congressman, we've received a number of questions during the hearing today and yesterday in the classified setting about these questions of logistics and contested logistics. It's an area of focus for the department, and one that you'll be seeing reflected in both the National Defense Strategy and the FY23 budget.
Very good. Let me move on to something else, and I suppose any of the three of you could respond to this, but each of us, we all regularly see now the condemnation of Putin by Western governments and the media, certainly now, but our exposure to the perspectives of the Indo-Pacific nations is more limited here. So do you have insights for us on how Putin's invasion of Ukraine has affected Indo-Pacific perspectives on the American-led international order and the West's resolve to confront aggression in the Pacific? And I'm chiefly interested in nations of India, Thailand, Vietnam, other development partners, but also obviously would love to hear about our treaty allies, South Korea and the Philippines. And I apologize if y'all tread some of this ground already. Many of us have multiple hearings this morning, so we're bouncing in and out. But would any of you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, Congressman, I would. Again, I can't tell you at this point what the PRC has learned from watching the European issue. What I would say is I think I'm seeing the right lessons that we'd like to learn. Number one, the investment of blood in order to prosecute this illegal event. Second, the international condemnation and the unwillingness to accept it. And third, the drastic economic impacts to the people. Those are the right lessons should this switch over to the Indo-Pacific region, and I think I'd leave it there.
Yeah, Congressman, General LaCamera, I can tell you that Ukraine asked the ROC for military and non-combat items, and they're providing $10 million in humanitarian assistance. And this economic impact is caught what the Russians, and they're now an unfriendly nation, the ROC is. So there's $12.5 billion in energy resources from Russia to the Republic of Korea. So it is having an impact on Korea.
Let me ask one more question, and I'll direct this to Dr. Ratner. I'm not sure how much time I have left, but I'm just curious, and I guess we all are interested in knowing what investments we need to make in our allies and partners to protect against vulnerabilities that China may exploit in an effort to prevent them from offering us support in a conflict. And what specific investments in our defense industrial base, for example, can we make that would simultaneously reduce the dependence of our allies and partners on Chinese technology and manufacturing and finance, and also enhance our readiness?
Congressman, time is running out here before the chairman cuts me off. I'll just say we are engaged in multiple discussions with allies and partners specifically on the types of asymmetric capabilities that we think they need to best deter and deny PRC coercion and aggression.
Very good. I'll yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Ms. Houlihan is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate the chance to ask a couple of questions. One of my questions has to do with Sino-Russian relationships, and just in my brief reading, understanding that there have been multiple statements made between the two states, multiple exercises and cooperation of various forms, but that the large and sort of the short of it is that we don't see a real formal alliance, so to speak, at this point in time. What would it look like if we were seeing a more formal alliance gel? What sort of signals or indications would we be seeing that could or should alarm us? Admiral, I was hoping you might be able to comment on that.
Thanks, Congresswoman. It's previously been described as a marriage of convenience. There's issues on both sides as whether or not they trust each other, but we need to look very closely at what's happening right now and see if that's changed at all. That would be very concerning if those two authoritarian nations delivered or developed or went into something that looked like a treaty alliance. So we're watching it very closely. Again, we're on day 14 of this thing in Europe, and we're watching it to try to understand what does that translate into.
And Dr. Ratner, you were shaking your head. What does that mean, would translate into? What are we looking for? Are there formal treaties or something else?
I think probably not a formal treaty in the short term, but as Admiral Aquilino said, we are watching very closely. At a minimum, I think we have seen Beijing's tacit support for Russian aggression in Ukraine. We've seen diplomatic support that they're providing. At home, they're censoring criticism of Vladimir Putin and support for Ukraine, so we see what they're doing domestically, politically. In terms of the questions you had about what it would look like at an enhanced level, I think if we saw China taking steps to support or try to route around some of the sanctions or give economic support to Russia as the rest of the international community was trying to apply pressure, that would be extremely concerning. And if they provided any military support in capabilities or otherwise, that would be extremely concerning.
Mm-hmm. In general, anything to add there?
Yeah, what I call it is third-party intervention and influence on the Korean Peninsula. So I don't separate Korea, DPRK, China, Russia. I think there'll be some kind of impact and any kind of hostilities on the peninsula that we're paying attention to.
Thank you. And my next question is somewhat related. The DoD has been trying over time to rebalance the global allocation of intelligence and surveillance and reconnaissance assets to U.S. Indo-PACOM. How is that going, and what are the gaps that still exist? If you, Admiral, might be able to elaborate on that.
Thanks, Congressman. So the theme that we've watched over the last 20 years is there's never enough ISR. The globe is a big place, and we have multiple areas that we keep tracks on. What I would say is as we shift towards a focus to the Indo-Pacific, some of those resources have come to the Indo-Pacific, but we're still not meeting the total requirement. We're not meeting the total requirement anywhere. What I will tell you is the Secretary has not pulled any assets from the Indo-Pacific based on what is needed in the Ukraine. So again, the department's focus in the right theater, but boy, it's a complex world.
Mm-hmm. In general, in your area, is there any gaps still in ISR that you would like to talk about?
Most of it is in placement and access, given the comprehensive military agreement between the North and the South, and just our ability to collect over DPRK. We cannot fly our ISR directly over. So we rely on the other ends to develop the intelligence picture.
And with my last minute, my question regards the Philippines and the strategic importance of the Philippines amidst a lot of political uncertainty that you all mentioned yesterday. How are you viewing that, and what can we be doing to, I guess, firm up our relationship with the Philippines in the face of uncertainty?
Thanks, Congresswoman. Again, the Secretary went to the Philippines not long ago, and as you know, we were having issues with the visiting force agreement, and he got that problem corrected. So the trend is in the right direction. We're doing more with them. We can continue to develop that posture there through our EDCA sites. We're building out Basa Air Base to practice train with them, Fort McSaysay. So it's on the right trend. We need to continue and expand those initiatives.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Bergman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Thanks to everybody. This late in the hearing, pretty much most of the questions have been asked. So rather than duplicate that just for the sake of saying it's not been said until I've said it, I'd like to kind of dig down a little deeper on the ISR piece that Representative Houlihan just indicated. Do you as in the Department of Defense, are you truly taking advantage of all of the capabilities that are out there? Let's say we use the term COTS, commercial off the shelf. Are there any opportunities for increased robustness in ISR using things like, again, already existing systems? I give you one example, like, a Sea Guardian, MQ-9B. That's just one example, because we've got a lot of challenges and you cannot have too much visibility. Any comments?
Yes, Congressman. We're certainly experimenting with anything that could provide additional capability. I'll give you an example of a sail drone with an ISR suite. So through our experimentation program, we are working to deliver those capabilities that haven't been applied militarily and figuring out how they deliver a warfighting outcome. Those that are promising, we'll work to accelerate and get in. But on the ISR side, it's all domains, whether it be undersea, on the sea, above the sea, space, and cyberspace. But we are trying to do that and take those opportunities to deliver an advantage.
Okay, well, I think if you will, for the safety and security of not only the American people, but all of our allies around the world, we cannot waste time and money through our research labs trying to get just a little bit extra edge when something that already exists will be good enough. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield back the remainder of my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Langevin is recognized for 5 minutes. You with us there, Jim? Mr. Langevin? We don't have any other Democrats.
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. Sorry about that.
Okay, Mr. Langevin is recognized for 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your testimony here today. If I could start with Admiral Aquilino, can you talk about the role of information operations in Indo-PACOM? It seems that there are a variety of information-related capabilities that are critical to our ability to compete in the region. How is Indo-PACOM doing in the information domain, and how can Congress help?
Congressman, thanks. So as a part of the Seize the Initiative objectives that we've talked about, and through this lens of think, act, and operate differently, it's certainly an area we have to get better at. Through the processes we developed, all of our operations are now integrated with the information space to ensure that we have the correct messaging, what we want to say, when we want to say it, or whether we don't want to say something. So we agree with you with regard to the importance, and we're working to try to strengthen that. Additionally, on the special operations side, there are certain components that have, I would articulate, increased capabilities, and we're working to pull those in.
Thank you. General LaCamera, so there's clearly the crises unfolding across the world daily, it seems, and I'm conscious of the fact that our ongoing focus on the invasion of Ukraine may pull our attention from North Korea. But General, can you please take seconds or so and discuss with us the most pressing needs on the Korean Peninsula that we simply cannot ignore?
Yeah, thanks, Congressman. For me, the top priority is maintaining the alliance with the Republic of Korea. And then combat readiness is number two. We've got an exercise program. We've focused mainly on command post exercises, but we need to make sure that we're training at the tactical level all the way up through the operational level. based on the changes in the terrain, based on the changes of the enemy, and based on the changes of friendly capabilities. We're in the process of rewriting our op plan for the defense of the peninsula.
Thank you. And then let me turn to Dr. Ratner. In your posture statement, you mentioned that we are growing our cooperation in cyberspace with India and the Quad. Can you expand on this work more specifically, and how has this cooperation been successful, and have there been any roadblocks to getting it done?
Congressman, the vast majority of that work is classified, but I'll just say we are working with the Indians both to ensure that we're able to communicate better in classified settings and information related to space, cyber, and intelligence. And we are also working with them to help them better defend their own networks.
Okay, and Admiral Aquilino, can you highlight some of the initiatives to advance cyber with our partners and allies in the Indo-Pacific region?
Yes, Congressman. As a part of the AUKUS agreement, again, if we look at that, everybody wants to talk about submarines, but it's really about advancing or improving our advanced capabilities. Cyber and space are clearly two of those. We're working directly with Australia, and next week, again, I'll be going there with General Nakasone and General Dickinson, along with the Chief of Defense, General Campbell, to frame and continue to move our capabilities forward. And we do that wherever we can safely and securely with our high-end allies and partners.
Thanks. Then Dr. Ratner and Admiral Aquilino, China plans to complete their modernization goals by 2035, and they continue to develop their capabilities across space, cyber, and nuclear domains. In this unclassified setting, can you generally explain how these modernization efforts compare to our own?
Again, thanks, Congressman. One update, so President Xi Jinping has accelerated that timeline for his forces, and he's asked for modernization by 2027. That is concerning. Again, we still have the greatest military on the planet. We need to understand his acceleration, the capabilities he's developing, and not only stay on par, but exceed and generate overmatch in all those areas.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. McClain is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. Historically, India has had significant ties economically with Russia. New Delhi has been an expansive market for Russian oil and gas sales, and last year Russia delivered the S-400 air defense system to India. In December 2021, the 2+2 meeting between India and Russia, India made it clear that the future of the relationship was dependent on Russian investing in Make in India projects. My question is for the Admiral and Doctor is, India clearly wanted to maintain its relationship with Russia by its actions. However, now that Russia has invaded Ukraine, do you see the scenario where India will have to take a side in that conflict and distance itself from Moscow and become more aligned with the Quad nations? Or do you see maybe India attempt to stay neutral? I'm just curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would just say, Congresswoman, a few of the other members of the committee have asked similar questions. I think we recognize that India has a long and complicated economic and security relationship with Russia. The majority of their weapon purchases come from Russia, but they've also been systematically diversifying away from Russian systems for years now in a way that we view as a positive trajectory. And I would also note that at that December summit that you cited, there were very few announcements on new purchases. That was quite notable. And just last week, Prime Minister Modi joined the leaders of the Quad Summit, including President Biden, for a leaders' call to talk about some of their shared priorities. So I agree, it's complicated, but the trend lines are moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Don't you wish it was easy sometimes? So you're confident in your opinion that you see it scaling back the dependency and the relationship?
India, on its own accord, as a sovereign decision, has been diversifying its arms purchases and development, including their own indigenization and making some substantial purchases from the United States as well. So I think the trend lines are in the right direction, and the importance of this relationship, I think, could not be overstated, and we ought to keep our eyes on that important fact.
Agreed. Sir?
Yes, ma'am. Again, we're seeing the right actions with regard to foreign military sales, the capabilities that they desire, and the leaning towards the United States, as Secretary Ratner said. That's key. Military to military, we operate together much more frequently. They've asked for capabilities, support, and help in areas that they haven't before, based on what I believe is a common security challenge in the form of the PRC. So as this plays out, again, India gets to make its own decisions, but I would articulate the same, that from my lane in the mill-to-mill piece, it's going in the right direction.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. With that, I'll yield my time back.
Thank you. Ms. Spice is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses. The good news is I believe I may be the last rep to question. So first of all, I want to say that I appreciated Mr. Langevin's comments and focus on cyber. As a member of the city subcommittee, I think that is something that we are looking at. I want to make sure that you all are engaging with Cybercom on a regular basis to, foster a relationship there because it will become more and more, I think, important as we move forward. My question is somewhat specific to my congressional district, which is the Oklahoma City metro area and specifically close to Tinker Air Force Base. And this is really directed at the Admiral. A significant share of investment in weapons systems acquisition and modernization is now focused on deterring China, which makes your input in operational threats and capability especially important. I do understand that JROC is in the process of reviewing the requirements for a number of programs, including the next arterial refueler, KCY. Can you tell me a little bit about Indo-PACOM's engagement and possible input into the process?
Thanks, Congresswoman. So, as it applies to the continued assessment of being able to execute our mission, air-to-air refueling is identified in every event as critical. Not only in Indo-PACOM, across all the combatant commanders, to include the strategic commander, especially with all the things that are in Tinker that are under his realm. So we identify the requirements. We have to continue to ensure we have the capacity to execute all of our war plans. So I do have input, and it's a critical focus area.
Excellent. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. At this point, we have nobody else here in line to ask questions. So it's a fancy way of saying we are done. I do want to thank the gentlemen for their testimony. This is going to be a huge year, FY23, as we've seen. The world has clearly changed, and our national security is going to be even more complicated than it was before. So look forward to working with all of you to make sure you have the tools you need to defend our interests. And I thank you very much for your testimony. And with that, we are adjourned.